Hello! Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Game Audio Hour, episode 192. This is a fortnightly podcast where we discuss all things game audio, from creative ideas to the latest techniques, project experiences to audio secrets. Here is where you'll find in-depth coverage and opinions related to game audio. And speaking of in-depth coverage, this is where I don't have much coverage here, like right here. So I decided to get rid of all of it. So yeah, that's my new summer look right now. How about you guys? What are you guys up to right now? Let's start with, let's see here. Alex, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Vince. I think you know what I think. I think you should get like a massive beard, just like a huge beard. I think you'd look really good with a beard, Vince.
Really? Oh man. I try. The thing is, it's like I get this, and I don't get too much coverage over here, though. You know, I can't. The connection is not that great. But I've thought about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Chase, you'd look pretty good with the full beard.
I'm kind of trying to do like the 3 o'clock shadow thing. My beard is it's taking years. And I don't know. Maybe when I'm like 65, it'll finally connect.
Okay. Well, speaking of no, I'm not going to go there. Sorry. Anyways, Michael, how are you doing up there?
I'm doing well. And in fact, speaking of hair, I just reached the financial inflection point where the money saved from doing my own haircuts has paid for the clippers that I bought for that purpose. So I'm feeling mildly smug. And my skills at self-haircutting have reached the point where when I do encounter people, they don't kind of look at me funny. So that was really the golden standard that I was aiming for. So hair-wise, it's a good time in my life.
That is really awesome. Yes, it's an interesting time. I bought myself some clippers, and it's been fun. It's been fun messing with this. I don't know why I did this to myself. I think my wife just really enjoyed laughing at me during this entire time, and it was, hey, as long as I can make her laugh, that's a good component of a good relationship, I'd say. So
I think it's a much better way to remember this whole coronavirus situation rather than all of the trouble that it's caused. So remembering it as coronavirus 2020 home haircuts.
Home haircuts. Yes, home haircuts. I'm all for that. But let's get to the matter at hand. We've got an hour, and we've got game audio to talk about. Lots of game audio. There's been a lot of interesting stuff happening. One of the things that happened last week was Game Developers Conference. And of course, Game Developers Conference did not do its usual thing. It did not take place in San Francisco. Instead, it took place solely online, which made things kind of weird and different. It's cool. It was fine. It was an interesting event, but it's certainly nothing compared to the big GDC of years past. And of course, all those GDCs were great opportunities to do so many things. Get together with people, with friends, with colleagues, to meet new friends, to meet new potential colleagues, potential clients, all that cool networking that we have to do to survive. Whether you're a game audio person or just any person working in the video game industry, because it is a big, fast-moving space. And I figured this might be a good place to start talking about stuff this week, because networking is one of these things that we just have to do. Some people do a good job at it. Some people don't. Some people respond and react differently to different types of networking and how we contact people. And actually, there have been a lot of people who are not game audio people that have talked about how game audio people actually talk to them. How does it feel when game audio people come at them, either in person in places like Game Developers Conference, or in emails, or in forums? How do these things actually work out? This is such a weird question. It's such a tough thing to deal with. I know for me, I've had a really difficult time doing cold emailing and cold calls and stuff like that. It's just not something that I'm very good at. But I would love to hear from you guys how you do this. How have you started up relationships with people you don't otherwise know? And how has been the response, the general response and reception to that type of networking? I'll go ahead and. I was gonna
sorry,
say. I was gonna say. I'll go ahead and say, like, I actually remember doing one single cold email. I've never cold emailed anyone before or since this one time, which was specifically a couple of emails after a Kickstarter campaign was shown off. It's like, hey, here's an early Kickstarter campaign. Bam. Oh, that looks cool. I know those developers. I've played their past games in the 90s. I like what they're doing. I have kind of a name for myself. I was in the middle of working on Sky stuff with that game company. Maybe it's worth actually sending an email. So I actually did that. It netted me exactly 0 responses. So whatever. So that is the extent of my cold emailing history. And for the most part, I've had much better success just doing very slow networking with people that I have somewhat of a connection to, as opposed to hitting people who I have 0 connection with. What about you guys? Alex, I was totally interrupting you.
Yeah, no, actually, I guess I'm in a bit of an interesting position because I'm on both sides of this table. Because I run a company, I get cold emails from all sorts of people all the time, including audio people. But also because I run a company, not so much at the moment, but previously with our previous sort of business direction and business model, I was also in the position of cold emailing and cold contact people for the company, not for game audio, but just for the company services in general. So as a result, yeah, I receive a lot and not so much now, but I used to send a lot as well. And let's see where to begin. Where to begin? It's a really tough one because, like, from the point of view of somebody who runs a company who doesn't actually need outsourced audio options, because either I do it myself or I take the work to one of my friends in our sector. On the one hand, it's kind of annoying, but then on the other hand, you understand as well from their point of view, it's a very valid way of just trying to get your services out there and trying to hustle, because the truth of the matter is that there is some benefit to putting your name into somebody's sort of subconscious somewhere, so that one day when they just happen to be thinking, we really need somebody to do this rigging or this 3D modeling or this soundtrack or these sound effects, you might just recall, there was that person who emailed me, just out of the blue, and I checked out their reel and it was pretty good. Maybe we could contact them. That doesn't not happen. Although it's very, very, very unusual, it doesn't not happen. So I think, I don't know, it's on the one hand, do you, Chase and Mike, do you do that very often? Like sort of just cold emailing people that you think may need audio services?
Yeah, I'm really bad at it. I'm really bad at it because, and it's such a heavy topic for me. I mean, this is something I do daily, and I'm doing it wrong. And I'll just be transparent with you. I've been doing it for several years, and ever since I got started, and I realized the reason I'm doing it wrong is because I'm not getting the results, and so I'm consistently refining the recipe, as one of my late great professors in community college has said. And I've had about a percentage of success with responses, and like before, it's not as fruitful as it takes a lot of energy to kind of do because you have to personalize each one if you want it to be done right, but you also have to be prepared that you're not going to get the response. And there's a layer of things that go along with this. Like, you're trying to make this a career if you want to, and then you have to emotionally put yourself together to get the work done, to be able to present it, to hopefully get a response, but to do it at a maximum level where it's not just like a cut and paste, but an individual response and direct letter of, hey, I could possibly help you with. And there's a lot of research that goes along, and to the point of where, as in, like, you could be emotionally spent from doing all of that work. It has to be done if you want it. So there is a multi-layer physical and mental break thing that happens with these cold emails. And if you're trying to do it constantly, especially as long as I have, you will eventually break. But if you have to refine the recipe if you want it to be done right, if you're passionate at least to think about it and such. And so there's another side to it, and why I said, like, I'm doing it wrong, but I'm not willing to give up, because it's just like, well, just because I made this food and the food didn't come out for the pancake that I want it to be like from this restaurant, doesn't mean I can't necessarily get there. I can keep trying and refining that recipe of that pancake to have it to be where it's at least serving good for me. And then eventually I can present it to others where they'll like the pancake as well. And that's where I'm trying to get to the point of.
I think that the thing you said there about personalization, like that, it's kind of basic rudimentary business emailing, but like that is absolutely key, because I know that with all of the emails that I get, the moment that I can see that it's somehow cut and pasted, or that it's, a template kind of thing, even the tiniest inkling of that actually means, from my point of view, oh, I don't need to respond to this. Like, I can just delete it because they didn't write it to me. They just copied it from a template bit. And even if you have to be very, very careful, here's a pro tip. If you use Gmail, especially the web interface, you got to be really, really careful, because often if you're not using Gmail, like me, I don't use Gmail, when you get emails that have cut and pasted sections, sometimes it cuts and pastes the rich text formatting. So you can actually see when somebody has written something and when they've cut and pasted something.
Ooh.
And that is really, really embarrassing. Like, if that happens to you, like, dear, and then it's a different font and it says Alex. I really like I love the work that your company, and then it's a different font, Moon Mode, does. And I would love to help you out with your soundtrack needs. It's like, as soon as you see that, okay, just straight away delete, don't even bother, because they didn't write it to me. So as you said, Chase, that's like really, really critical, that you're actually writing every one of them from scratch. And that takes, as you said, a huge, huge amount of energy for realistically what are very, very slim chances of actually producing anything.
I have actually
How about you,
received, I've received messages that said, "Dear $name."
Oh no.
They didn't even fix the mail merge temp variable that was supposed to be replaced by my name. I virtually never cold call, because, as general marketing theory will tell you, the return on investment of energy is so low. And you might argue, well, it barely costs any time or effort to send out a message, but that means that it barely costs any time or energy for everyone else to send out a message. So the cloud from which you have to merge is giant. But I would like to suggest that coldness is a spectrum rather than a Boolean. And this is building a little bit off something that Chase said. A cold call means you have no common ground with the person you're writing, other than you're in the same industry. And if you can find some commonality, some common ground that might build tentative trust, you might sometimes get past that instinct that Alex said, where you just want to delete anyone who looks like that they're mass mailing. So there's a difference between, hello, $name. I see you are in the $game industry. I have scoring services, versus, hey, I was at GDC and I heard your talk on this game. That sounds amazing. Now, you obviously have great music in that, but I'd love to be in consideration for something you do in the future. So now you're showing a real bespoke approach to their needs. You're saying, I know who you are. I know what your needs are. I resonate with the kind of games you're making. So, they don't know you, but at least you've established some common ground. A variant of this approach is, hey, we're both alumni of the University of Northeast Hampton and the media department. Go Beavers or whatever. If you can find some kind of commonality, it will warm up the theoretically cold email and increase your chances dramatically. But that said, the best kind of marketing message that isn't to someone you already know has some kind of referral from it. So if you can get hey, Bob Schmeckelfield said that I should send you an email, that kind of endorsement goes a huge way towards getting you not deleted, because the game developer you're writing will say, oh, I know Bob, he's a great guy. He wouldn't send me a lunatic. So I'm going to assume that Chase here is probably really talented, and at least I'll flag his email to check out later.
Those great points too. I also want to add on to it, since we're kind of like just giving the general advice of array things. I've noticed a lot of people getting into industry now, or for the past, I want to say at least 4 years, they do not do their homework. Typically, they do not do the research about the person. They don't do this, they don't do that. And some people who are doing the cold calling probably aren't getting those responses. And that's why this whole conversation's come about. Whereas in the game audio folks are getting like spammed up within inboxes of other developers, because they're not seen on a website. Typically, sometimes it says composer of, part of the team, about us, dig through the website, look for that stuff. It's there. If they have it there, they typically do. That means don't email them. It's like you said, it's just a little bit of research and refinement that you do, rather than just doing the copy and pasting. You can save yourself some time, and then it just refines the process, and it won't make us game audio folks look nearly as bad, which is what I felt terrible about the tweet, because it just shines this bad light on it. We're already not in most of the pre-production process, typically, not all of us, but most of us. And then you add on to like, well, then we're already an afterthought. Now you add to the fire, like just spamming folks. Do the research, do the homework, find out if they at least have someone, apologize for interrupting them, because I'm sure they get a lot of stuff all the time for things like that. But it's just simple things to just do your homework. I looked on a website, it was cold calling at least probably a month ago, and I had looked, and it was like, oh, you should submit here. And then I did a little bit more homework instead of just be like, okay, cool. I saw and I scrolled down, it says we do not need your audio services or your video services as such. And I was like, cool, done. I don't have to do the extra work. I don't have to spam your email. You don't have to be upset or worried or psychologically frustrated. I just have to point that out. Just please start doing your homework. Please. It would help so much.
I'm going to gently contradict a point I think you made in passing, and that is you said it's a good idea to apologize during reaching out.
Yes, it's a good idea.
I'm going to take an opposing point of view. I think you should never apologize, because you should never be contacting someone in a modality that would require apology, because if you're doing it right, you're offering them something, and you never need to apologize for offering. I'm also going to suggest that if you see an apology, you tend to think amateur, because I don't think professionals typically frame an offer in terms of, sorry for interrupting your time. I mean, they open the email, so obviously they can judge whether it's worth their time. I would suggest almost anything else. Open with a compliment. Say, "I love your game," or if you're coming straight out of the blue, at least embrace rather than apologize for that fact. Say, "Hey, you don't know me, but I'm a big fan of your games." So it's kind of the same thing, but you're not apologizing for it. You're just hanging a light on you're pre-handling the objection, as salespeople say. So I will suggest that you never apologize, and nor should you, really, because the worst case scenario is you're offering something legitimate that they don't happen to need at the moment.
Fair point.
Yeah, I think another thing, these are all, again, just sort of very basic things with business emailing, but actually recently, Moon Mode, we did a recruiting run for artists on Twitter, and we had a huge response to it. I actually had 40 applicants, which is fantastic. And little known piece of trivia about me, actually, before getting into the game industry, I was a human resources manager for 7 years. And I have to say, one thing, totally rudimentary again, but please remember you are applying for a job. So check your English. Most people, people would think it's all in my reel. I mean, it's about my reel. It's about my portfolio. Yes, but you and every one of these other people also has an excellent portfolio, an excellent reel. And so it comes down to really, really good musician versus really, really good musician versus really, really good musician with kind of questionable English. If you're not a native speaker of English, of course, that's fine. However, it's no excuse if you are a native speaker of English, spelling errors, grammatical errors, things like that. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but when I have sort of a group of people and they're all very, very good, the criteria that you use to judge who you should move on to the next phase of recruiting gets more and more sort of, detailed and more narrow. And it could come down to, the smallest thing, like I just don't get a very professional vibe from this person. It just doesn't seem very professional. If I'm going to pay somebody a lot of money to give me something, I want to feel like they're reliable and they're professional and they're experienced. And if the email that I'm reading as the first contact is kind of a bit, overly casual, hey man, how's it going? What's up, bro? It's like, no, you're applying for a job. Don't do that. Or if it's like obviously written by a native speaker, but it's full of mistakes. I think you can usually tell when somebody's doing their best with English as a second language versus a native speaker who just couldn't be bothered. I think most of us can tell. And if it's the latter, it definitely doesn't put a good light on you when you're comparing your excellent portfolio or reel together with lots of other people's excellent portfolio and reels. So it's all very, very basic stuff that you would learn anywhere about how to apply for a job. But I think it's important to remember that you are applying for a job. So that should be the first thing that you're thinking when you're writing. And then, as Chase said, absolutely, when you go into a job interview, you should be completely loaded up with all of the research that you need about the company and about the position and about what you're there for, and then how to best make yourself appealing for precisely their situation. And it's exactly the same with this kind of sort of sales email as well. You consider it like an interview. So be completely clued up on everything about the company and who they are and what they've done and what their needs are. It just makes, from on the reader side of things, it just makes it that much more engaging. It's like, wow, this person is really, really committed. So yeah, over the 40 people that we had apply for the position that we were running at Moon Mode, it was some very, very impressive people. And that makes you sort of like, wow, all these people are so impressive. How do I choose between them? And you start to get into the really, really small details. So maybe I am old-fashioned, but yeah, I think it can't hurt to be just that little bit extra diligent on all fronts when you're doing this.
Oof.
Alex brings up a great point in that people who are making decisions, hiring decisions, are often dealing with a large, overwhelming number of applicants. And I can tell you from experience that after a while, you just want to trim the list a little bit. And you start looking for excuses to remove somebody from the list, not out of malice and not because you want to judge the person. It's not like, haha, I'm going to make them feel bad. You just want to trim down the list to make your decision process easier. So it might just be an email that's written in a slightly too chummy way that might suggest, oh, this person's going to have a little bit of an attitude. I'll just put them on the no pile for convenience. So anything you can harness to keep yourself in the running, including, as Alex said, good grammar and a little bit of professionalism in the tone, will work in your advantage, to your advantage.
Yeah, I think that this might also be relevant. The probably the worst experience that I've had, no, not worst, a not so good experience that I've had with a cold calling game audio professional was somebody that wrote to me out of the blue and then put me on their mailing list. And so now I periodically get responses, like sort of newsletter style, it's kind of personalized. Hey, Alex, how's it going with this? And I can see you doing that. That's great. By the way, here's the latest news and updates from me. And down the very bottom, it's like MailChimp. Click here to unsubscribe. That was not cool, just because I felt I didn't voluntarily want to be put on your mailing list. I can see that this is a very effective, a very aggressive way to do this. And if I was the kind of person who couldn't be bothered to click unsubscribe, then yes, potentially having your newsletter in my inbox every 1 or 2 months would definitely put you at the front of my mind, but not necessarily in a good way when I never signed up for the mailing list to begin with. So that was probably the least pleasant experience that I've had. I didn't actually unsubscribe, by the way, because as somebody who's also involved in game audio, I kind of feel a sense of compassion. so I usually respond to that person, which kind of makes them respond back, which is fine. It's, really nice person, and that's great. But yeah, if you are considering sort of making it systematic, where you have like a mailing list and you're putting people on there and then giving them frequent updates, just consider whether or not it's a cool thing to do to sort of put somebody on your list without them giving sort of permission for it.
Yeah.
Modern
absolutely.
mailing lists are a little bit perpetuated on the observation that it's a pain to unsubscribe to things, because sometimes you're giving your email in the process of unsubscribing, or you go to a page and there's like 15 options and you have to type an essay as to why you don't want to be on the mailing list. And interestingly enough, interestingly to me, I recently signed on to Hey Email, which is a email client and service. And one thing it lets you do is the first time you receive an email from somebody you haven't heard from before, it says, do you really want to hear from this person ever again? And it gives you an extremely easy way to say, actually, no. And then they'll just shunt it into a little folder, and that person will have no idea that happened. And I think this is going to be adopted by other email clients in the future. So I suspect the efficacy of mailing lists is going to drop, especially when people fall into that zone of, I don't really want to hear from that person, but I'm too lazy to figure out how to unsubscribe, and they only write once a month. So I think we're going to see that start to fade out in terms of an effective marketing strategy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like it was only a year or so ago when I was hearing so many people bring up all the pros of mailing lists, going old school in that fashion. Hey, this is very powerful for marketing. This is very powerful for all sorts of things. There were just so many different lectures and whatnot talking about, hey, here are the metrics that we got since we decided to go more on mailing versus on the hot thing over the last decade, which has been all sorts of variations of social media. So yeah, that'll be really interesting to see how much of an impact that has. Maybe we'll see a Google version of that. I'm a Gmail person, and we know that Google always does things and tries to do beta versions of features. We might see something like that pretty soon.
I think that the best Twitter in our industry. We're kind of fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you look at it, that Twitter is sort of so ubiquitous in the game industry. And I really have found that Twitter is a really valuable and excellent way to be looking out for work, especially because you can, like Mike said, it's an interesting, I think Mike's analogy is very good, that like cold contacting, it doesn't necessarily have to be you just contact somebody that you've never really interacted with before. Twitter gives you a means to kind of try and create or strike up a light interaction with somebody if you are very interested in applying for or at least offering your services. It's a little bit, if you look at the person and then you see, okay, they're interested in this kind of music because you've seen that they've linked to these kinds of Spotify things before, or, they're playing this game or something like that. It does give you the means to make yourself a little bit more memorable when you contact and say, hey, I saw that you really like this, and by the way, I made a track quite similar to that for this previous project that I worked on here. You might like to listen to it, or something like that. Anything that you can do to sort of create that relevance.
Yeah, I think aligning from social media is cool. I actually would suggest that you got to be even more careful about it, because it is actually totally possible that you have a, somewhat of a connection there established in social media somewhere, let's say Facebook. And then you find that you reintroduce yourself over in another format, maybe on Twitter or in an email. And you totally forgot about this other relationship that exists in this other social network. Someone actually emailed me with something that sounded very much like a very typical cold email. And I looked at this person and I thought, wait a minute, I totally know this person. I know where he lives. I know that we have a shared interest in alternative MIDI interfaces, especially Wind Controller. I remember that we talked about these things. Wait a minute, why is he messaging me now with this? It was this otherwise very professional, very courteous sort of communication. But he totally forgot about this other thing that happened. We already had this established relationship in this other social media network. And then that suddenly put this person in a negative light for me. So you do have to be careful about aligning between the different social media networks.
Speaking of that, can I jump right in and ask all of you, what is your, I've been trying to figure this out. I've been getting a lot of LinkedIn connects lately, and I've been trying to figure out, what is the LinkedIn Connect etiquette? Do you just add whoever because you think that you're connected to someone else and hope to have some kind of introduction to someone else? Or does it seem to come off, whereas is it more pleasant, and I would assume in this case that they connect, but they write a personal message to you since you've never met this person before? What are your thoughts?
LinkedIn. He said the L word. LinkedIn. Oh no.
It's still very good though. Like, those are the decision makers that are on those platforms.
Yeah, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is that. It's that. What's the black sheep? I don't know. No, what's the right word? The odd one out. It's like, oh yeah, that, and then you go and log in and you find you've got 40 messages from recruiters and stuff like that. It's like, maybe I should update my profile. I think LinkedIn usually gets followed by that sentence. Maybe I should update my profile. No, I think you're right, Chase. I think that like just random connects from people that you've never met any before, that I think that's a bit sort of questionable. I don't know that I'd see LinkedIn in the same way as Twitter, where it's totally expected that you would be followed by people that you've never met on Twitter. LinkedIn, I tend to hope that there's some kind of link there, hence LinkedIn. So as you said, if it's a personalized message asking for a connection, then that's probably better than just, hey, we could be friends, or no, we could be collaborators. Let's hook up. Let's link.
Yeah. If there's a message there, I'm much more likely to hit that connect button. I do get a lot of stuff that's like, oh yeah, connect so many mutual people that we know, whatever. But if there's a message, I'll actually go and read that message, and every now and then it's like, okay, I see what's going on here. I get where you're coming from. I see where there could be something mutually beneficial in some indeterminate future point. Cool, I'm up for that. I personally never do any sort of connection reach out on LinkedIn. Maybe that's not the right thing to do. Maybe there's a better way for me to handle that. But I'm still not sure exactly how to deal with LinkedIn, even though over the last year I've heard so many people, both game audio and other game professionals, say that LinkedIn is actually a pretty good platform for a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
If you reach out on LinkedIn, the same principles apply to all other media. Try to frame your connection in terms of the interests of the other party rather than strictly yourself. I've had composers reach out to me on LinkedIn and they said, I am interested in connecting to more people in game audio or something equivalent. And, I know you sent me a LinkedIn request, so that is sort of implicit in the fact that you wanted to connect to me. But B, what's in it for me? You graduated from Full Sail University 6 months ago, well, goody for you, but that doesn't mean that we're colleagues other than being in the same industry. So if you can find some basis for evoking the other person's interest or perspective, even if it's just, I love your stuff, if it's another composer, or I really love the games you make, if it's a potential client, it ties back to what Chase said about personalization and to what Alex said about professionalism.
Yep, definitely. We've been talking about all these things, emails, social media networks, but also last week GDC happened online, and there was online stuff. There were online lectures, which are probably the most highlighted aspect of the 3-day long event that happened last week. But then there were also these networking tools that they provided. It was sort of its own social network where you can connect to people, you can message people. Did any of you actually partake in any of that? Did you utilize any of those tools?
I did not.
I tried.
You tried? Ooh, that sounds kind of ominous, Chase.
I know it's not ominous. I did try, and I don't think I did my best to allow the time to learn it properly to get the most benefit out of it. And that goes without saying that now that I know, you still need to give yourself probably at least week preparation to understand new platforms, especially something as new as GDC Summer that just happened, because it's a learning curve for everybody. But with the same, not as much preparation, I would say, I guess depending on who you are, but typically to set up meetings with people from a conference of that magnitude would be at least 1 to 2 months in advance. And if the platform's not set up for registration and meeting and networking on virtually, it's a little faster than having to do it from that length of 1 to 2 months. So you can cut it down to 1 to 2 weeks, which is the benefit there. But also understanding that the tools may not match other things that you may be comfortable with in that regard. And so that's why I say I tried, but I failed at giving myself the allotted time to make it as fruitful as I should have made it for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I gave it a little bit of a go as well. I got to admit, I was actually pulled into it. I sort of forgot about it during the first day of GDC. And then on a whim, I decided to check this whole platform out. And I suddenly saw myself face to face with a bunch of messages and notifications. What the heck are these notifications? What are these messages? Who are these people? And I was like, okay, I got to deal with this, because I did establish my presence here at this conference, even if virtually, and maybe I didn't intend to be so invested last week. But I ended up trying to do my best following up on all these conversations. And it was all right. It was okay. There were some decent conversations that I had there. But in the end, most of it was, well, hey, let's take this to email. Okay, this sounds cool. Let's take it to email. All right, this is kind of a fun, sort of nice bit of small talk here. And forever it will remain in this particular bit of the web until this platform goes down. It was all right. I got to admit, I miss GDC. I can't wait to go to a real GDC. Maybe it will even be next year. Who knows?
Yeah.
Do you what's the word on Gamesoundcom? Have you heard whether or not they have similar kinds of networking features for that?
I'm not sure. I don't think that they've said anything specific about it. We know that's going to happen. And it's going to be online, and registration is now open. But I have no idea if there will be any specific tools for conference goers. It could be anything from like a robust mini social network to maybe it will just be a Twitch stream. I honestly have no idea. Or maybe one of you has some more insight? I don't know. Maybe we should invite Brian onto the show and talk about Gamesoundcom. Be like, hey, because Gamesoundcom is actually a really good event. I've generally liked the breadth of lectures that they have there. I've There are some friends that I've made from those various lectures. It's always been a good opportunity to both do some proactive networking as well as decompress from the grind of game audio. I've always found it to be a really good conference, so I'm looking forward to it. I just don't know the details yet.
Yeah, I'm considering attending, although in my case, because of the time zone, yes, it is an online thing, but it'll be like basically all night for me, and so it kind of needs to be worth it,
Right.
if you know what I mean. Especially if it does have sort of networking features and some kind of facility to aid in meeting new people, then I would love to do that. That's kind of more of my objective with this kind of thing than the lectures. But I guess it all depends on what kind of system is built up around this online event. I don't know. GDC next year. It's hard to say at this point, really, isn't it? I mean, also, let's see, Develop, which is a very big event here in Europe. It's hosted in the UK, but it's a really fantastic sort of mini GDC, really good scale, not too big and not too small. That was supposed to go ahead in, I think, October or November, but they've recently also converted that into an online event. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I kind of feel like at the moment we are at this point where everything is changing and everything's shifting around, and probably this time next year we might be looking at some kind of new, amazing, fantastic functionality with these kinds of online events, just to make it much easier to network, because that's, I think, what we're mainly missing out on at the moment.
I think that I'm hoping that people will get a chance to get a 2-for-1 or a 2-for-2 rather, and if all the positivity that goes out to at least going back to in-person events safely occurs next year, but then they also do something virtually for those that are not financially able to make those things, and that the platform is more robust and refined as it would be for GDC Summer for folks that typically always say, like, it's too expensive for me to come. Alex, as you know, like you're saying, we talk about all the time, like, I'd love to show up, but it's extremely expensive to come out. And, if it has networking opportunities that are beneficial to all parties, to at least have that for those folks, especially for maybe people, if we are going back in person, that are not mentally prepared to be back in a social space that they feel is good for their health and so on and so forth. So I'd like to see both.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, I think, one positive thing that hopefully this whole situation, if there could be some kind of new solution for allowing that kind of functionality and at least compensating for the lack of physical networking with some kind of online feature like that. As you said, yeah, when things hopefully go back to normal eventually, let's hope the new normal does allow for easier attendance remotely in some form or other, because certainly, yeah, in my case, going from Australia to Japan and now to Sweden, it's like, yeah, Gamesoundcom, GDC, NAM, all of these things sounds cool. Would love to go, but it's like $1,500 to get there. And so that's like
another $1,500 to
well,
stay there. San Francisco.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then in the case of GDC, it's $1,500 to even get in the door.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like when you factor all of that in, it's like, yeah, well, maybe not. So, yeah, let's hope it's... Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Please finish.
I was going to say, let's hope that there's some very creative, innovative thinkers out there devising up new sort of software-based solutions for helping with networking at online events.
Mm-hmm.
Mike?
A little bit of the for networking. If things go increasingly on, game developers say, we can save ourselves a lot of airfare for our company if we just have a series of...
I think Mike just cut. Oh, he's with us. Now he's not. Let's just nod our heads like this.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry,
We agree,
Mike.
Mike.
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
What was the last coherent thing that you heard from me?
Oh, big
The beginning
companies
of your
saving money.
sentence.
And then it just, ugh. Yeah.
That's kind of where I was up to.
Yeah.
If I freeze again, I won't. I'll save it for next time. But if there's less in-person networking, there'll be yes, there's more outreach and more networking opportunities across the world. But now you have a much larger number of people all converging and looking for those networking opportunities. And now you are robbed of the in-person vibe that I think really facilitates networking. So it could really be a double-edged sword, especially where newcomers are concerned.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to have those opportunities. I think it'll be great to see the technology improve. I mean, I know for GDC there were some things that they played around with, sort of like a pseudo VR presence thing that you could do, being in a shared, not quite physical space. It's like, okay, those things were kind of cool. That was cute. I stuck to mostly the basic messaging stuff that was provided by the platform, but it was also fun seeing people play around with these new toys. Maybe in the future the new toys will actually be really robust tools that do a significant job when it comes to conveying all these people and all this presence. And yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah, and for all the talk of the things that GDC is doing and isn't doing, I think there were some cool things that happened here. I know one thing that a lot of speakers talked about during GDC was the fact that they felt like they were doubly present during a lot of these lectures because every single talk was recorded. But even while they were in the recorded form presenting the talk, they were also able to respond to people who were raising questions in real time during that time slot. So it's like, oh man, I could actually say so much more while this is happening, rather than having to wait till the 30, 45 minutes is over and going to the breakout room, going to the hall, whatever, in order to deal with these follow-ups that people have. There were some cool things there. And yeah, maybe we'll see an improved GDC online experience, if not an actual GDC next year. Because now that I think about it, GDC usually happens in March, and that's only half a year away. I wonder how much is going to change over the next half year.
Yeah.
Can only hope for the best.
Hope for the best.
Indeed. Man, that actually took up a pretty large swath of time during our game audio hour. We only have 12 minutes left. I had a couple of follow-up things that I wanted to say. Hey, actually, maybe I'll go into this. Because, hey, one of these guys is in your neck of the woods, Alex. Are you familiar with this developer named Oscar Stolberg?
Yeah. Everybody hates him.
Oh, really? Oh, man, that is too bad.
He's one of those sort of, I guess the best word to describe him would be a savant. Like one of those sort of creative genius kind of people that's like, oh, I just made this. And it's just like,
I know those guys.
The sort of the casualness with which Oscar sort of drops these absolutely sort of incredible things. It's like, just, of course, the reality behind it is, of course, there's a huge amount of work that he puts into all of that. But it doesn't seem like that. It just sort of, here's something I made. And it's like, every time, it's like, we hate you.
Oh, man.
He's brilliant. He's brilliant. I've never met him, but everybody here knows about him. He's kind of like I said, sort of a bit of a rock star.
Yeah. Well, what's up with these guys that are... I feel like I know quite a few guys that are like that, but they always come from your neck of the woods. So, like... Eskil Steenberg is one of the guys that also comes to mind there. He famously, single-handedly coded this MMO from scratch. It's just like, what the heck is going on? It's just this crazy accumulation of this world and these creative tools and these processes and whatnot. It's like, these people are crazy. They're amazing. And it's kind of infuriating, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we could. It's a whole other conversation we could get into if you're interested, maybe another time. But there are some sort of socio-economic reasons why Scandinavia sort of is in a better position to produce that kind of person. But yeah, for the most part, you're right. There's a lot of those kinds of people here, and I have the pleasure of working with a number of them actually. Remotely and also directly as well. Just sort of, wow, like this, yeah. An artistic or technical savant is really the only term I can use to describe them. Just like genius.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just kind of wanted to use that to point out something that he actually tweeted a couple of days ago. He recently made this thing that's on Steam Early Access called Townscaper. And he put out a tweet here. I figure it might be a nice little thought exercise for us. He says, I get a ton of lovely emails from talented composers asking to make music for Townscaper. I'm sorry I do not have time to respond to most emails I get these days. I'm afraid I will disappoint you in saying that my current thinking is that Townscaper probably should not have music.
Oh, yeah, Jonathan Blow, the number 2. This is what it sounds like.
Well,
yes, this is great.
But hey, at least Jonathan Blow actually did put music in. I mean, Braid, he licensed music for a lot of things, but
right.
But
because he felt that no composer could write for it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit different though. He does go a little bit further. Townscaper does not have any state changes. It would make sense to fit music around because Townscaper is very much a toy. And I get it, honestly. When he explains it, it's like, yeah, I get it. It would probably just be playing one track after another. And in that case, people might as well just play their own music or podcast or YouTube video, audiobook, etc. And he also goes on to say, hey, it would be really cool with some procedural music based on the town you are building. But that's a big and complex undertaking far outside my expertise and not something that I can take on anytime soon. And I just wanted to sort of present that to you. I don't know, how many of you guys have actually seen or played with Townscaper? It's cool. Townscaper is this thing where it just making a quaint village, city, town, in the ocean, by a lake, whatever. It's fun and easy. It is a really cool toy. But
I'm looking at it now. It does look adorable.
Yeah, I think he's actually totally right. And I actually agree that it doesn't need music. He's completely right. You could try and write music for it, but it would probably be either largely procedural, which is quite an undertaking, as he says, or it would just be sort of loops of some kind of ambient wash track in the background. And at that point, you would need to question, well, what really is the emotional worth there of doing that? The sound effects that he's got in Townscaper are nice.
They're very nice.
They're nice. I mean, they're good. I mean, they're not going to blow you away with their amazing sound effect of design quality, but they're very nice, but they do enough really to sort of just create that nice, peaceful, minimalistic mood, which the game is not game, the app, the program is really kind of heading towards. So yeah, if you added music onto that, really, if I had to write music for that, or I had to arrange or direct other people to write music for that, I would probably go the direction of exactly what he said, where it's kind of like these long ambient loops that at that point it's kind of like, well, what do we benefit by doing that, really? I mean, you already have enough of that feeling from the interactions and from the nice little sound effects that he has already. So yeah, save the time, save the money. Let's not have music. So I quite agree with his statement, and also the reasoning I think is very sound.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sound! I see what you said there.
See what I did there?
Well done.
Yeah. It actually got me thinking about other things. Townscaper is cool. It definitely strikes me as a really cool, fun, cute, beautiful digital toy. And that's really like a lot of other things. A lot of Will Wright's games are very much digital toys. SimCity is a toy. Now, you could play it as if there is these various end goals, end states that you want to reach, but for the most part, it's just a toy. I played the heck out of that game when I was younger. And they did have soundtracks. They were cool soundtracks. Actually, they were quite endearing. I can still hum some of them. It's like, that thing on that steel pan back in SimCity 2000, that's still in my head. And they were just doing what Oscar was describing at first, which was, it's just a series of tracks playing back to back, not related to the game state in any way. Not saying anything about whether you are close or far from any particular goals that you may or may not be reaching for. But I actually thought back to that and thought, yeah, SimCity did kind of need that music. For as awesome of a toy as it was, and it was definitely a toy, an extremely robust and rich toy, I think it did, in fact, benefit from that music. And so I can't help but compare these two things.
I think that's a really good point, Vince. I think the reason could be that in the earlier versions of SimCity, especially graphically, whereas it doesn't have the graphical fidelity or the animation quality to really engage you fully. You look at Townscaper, it's doing all of that with its graphics. Like, it's all basically, yes, the procedural technology is amazing, but the animations and the graphics, they engage you 100%.
Mm-hmm.
In the earlier SimCity games, maybe 60%, because it's just by the nature of the hardware that it's running on, it's that much more primitive. So, you could fill up the remainder of that 40% with the music, whereas in Townscaper, you could argue that, well, already the game is so compelling visually, maybe it doesn't need anything else to get it over that line to make it into a really memorable experience.
Maybe. Chase, Michael, what do you think about the possibility for making music for this game? Do you think that there is space for it in this type of game?
Having acquainted myself with the game over the last 3 minutes while Alex was giving his reasoning, I find that I agree entirely with Alex. I think like the visuals of this game look compelling enough that you don't need a wash. Like, when you boot up your PS4 or equivalent, you get like kind of the atmospheric quasi music just drifting just to make the interface a little more interesting. I don't think this needs that kind of space filler of sound.
I disagree.
Oh,
Bring it.
come on.
Bring it, Chase.
There's pockets for little things, even if it's not going to be a loop of a music of such, but you can have, I think there's space for jingles. And what I mean by that is just from seeing how you can build it up for such things. First of all, if this person is as genius as they are, they can totally do the procedurally thing and take more time and do it. But I also thought about having the player be able to make their own music if they just had like a tiny microphone and making it really interactive. So if I say like, and then I sing it into there, whereas in like where I'm building, the musical like voice will like seep that in, and then it will create escape itself. We use a technology like pause stretch to space that out and conform or constrict whatever you want it to do. And then that's really embodying the player to even make their own soundscape for music things that they want to share. So I'm thinking like Super Mario Maker. I'm taking ideas from Breath of the Wild with small jingles. I'm thinking my own like interactive experience of pushing game audio forward with something that says like, rather than saying we don't need music at all, remember it's a part of the entire art form. Let's try to at least fit some of it in there somewhere. Now I'm playing devil's advocate, but I'm also thinking of just general ideas that possibly could fit with this.
Yeah.
That's really... let's jump on him.
I was going to say, we could give ourselves a homework assignment. Since the game is pretty cheap, we could all get it and play with it for a week and then reconvene on this next week and see what our opinion is.
I'll let I got a great idea. Let's make our own soundtrack for it. I know exactly how mine's going to sound.
Yeah, I got to admit, I've got my own ideas for this as well. I think it would be kind of fun to maybe develop some of those ideas and show it off. Are we going to do we want to try doing some show and tell 2 weeks from now?
I'll make mine 6 hours long. How about you?
Oh man, we can. Well, hey, if it's 6 hours long, we can find 30 seconds of that to exhibit.
I think Chase's point is really, really interesting, and it comes down basically to it's also a game design discussion as well now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's impossible for us to say because obviously we are not him.
Right.
He himself has in mind that what is the focus of my game? What is it that I want to communicate with my game? Or more importantly, what is it that I want people to remember from my game, my app experience? In this case, it's clearly the procedural generation and the feeling of doing those things with the gamma, little sound effects there. It's that sort of cute, neat, fun little toy feeling that he wants. Therefore, with that in mind, you could argue that maybe this is not the place for pushing the envelope when it comes to game audio technology. You could argue that. However, as Chase has said, it also is an opportunity to use that opportunity in this context to do something interesting like that as well. So really, I guess it comes down to the overall objectives that he has had for this, and I think he's made that clear in his tweeted response that Vince read out a moment ago.
Yeah. Cool. This has been a really full game audio hour, but we can't cut off the game audio hour just now. We have to at very least talk about what it is that we're consuming right now. What media are we consuming? We've talked about Townscaper. I've been playing with that. What about you guys?
I've been listening to a lot of Yellow Magic Orchestra.
Oh man, that's great. Blast from the past.
Oh yes. And I've actually been lamenting the sad lack of T-Square content on Spotify or Apple Music.
Yes, that sucks. So that's why you should have a full CD collection like I do.
My wife is a huge T-Square fan, but she likes one specific track, so she only has the one album with that track on it.
Oh man.
You know Omens of Love?
Yes, I know Omens
Vince?
of Love, yes.
Yeah, that's her favorite track.
That is a classic.
Yeah, we don't have we do not have access, unfortunately, to the wider kind of catalog of T-Square or even Cassiopeia work. Cassiopeia, I think, has more stuff on Apple Music and Spotify, but sadly, T-Square, there's a big hole there. What's going on, Japan music industry? Come on, let's sort this out.
Yeah. Japan music industry, they're weird. Are you dealing with the Japan music industry at all? Chase, Mike?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, from the past though. I'm working on a retro game album, so I'm consuming a lot of retro game music. I've figured I have two players. Thank you, Alex, from Inphonic, our friends. They have Rhymecast, and so I'm able to segue out the 2612 chips and listen to the individual channels and break it down there. But then I also have Fubar, which I pull in Super Nintendo tracks or Game Boy tracks from the 2A03 or the VR06 chips, and then like isolate channels from there, and then really just pick apart our awesome Japanese composers from the 80s and 90s with video game music and to study how they're kind of doing things. So that's kind of like what I've been consuming.
Wow. Amazing. Mike?
Maybe, actually, I don't know. Alex will be able to tell me. So on my to-do list for a long time was this note that said Velocity 2X, one of Alex's favorite soundtracks. And I'd finally gotten down through my listening list to this point, and I said, all right, I'll check it out. So I don't know anything about the game other than it has cool album art, but it's a pretty awesome soundtrack. It's kind of very imaginative electronica with great grooves. There's just something like sensorily pleasing about them. And it was very listenable as an album for someone who's never played the game. I have no idea if it's Japanese or not, but thumbs up to that album.
It is not. It is by Joris de Man, who is the composer of all of the stuff for Horizon Zero Dawn, as well as lots of other very, very notable game audio soundtracks. And it was a collaboration between him and the CEO of Future Lab, whose name is James Marden. Future Lab is a UK-based game studio. And James Marden does a lot of techno stuff. And Joris de Man does a lot of orchestral stuff. And that album is the result of the collaboration between the two of them. So anything that's kind of groovy, that's mostly thanks to James. And anything that is epic and amazing and wonderful in terms of synthesizer texture and composition, that is largely the contributions of Joris de Man. So, yeah, one of my favorites.
That is awesome. Man, so much cool stuff out there. Not enough time to consume all of this media. Not enough time for Game Audio Hour, well, at least until 2 weeks from now. I just need to say thank you to all of you for watching and listening to this episode of the Game Audio Hour. And also, thank you to Kyle, who is one of the Game Audio Hour founders, and he recently celebrated a birthday. So today
actually.
Oh man,
Yeah.
today is his birthday actually. So shout out to him. Happy birthday, Kyle, and thank you for all of your contributions over the years. It's great. I mean, without you, we couldn't have gotten to episode 192, which is exactly what this is here. So yes, thank you, Kyle. Thank you to our listeners. If you like us, be sure to like this video on YouTube. You can follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Twitch, as well as follow us on Twitter, where we will post updates and let you know about the next episode to come. So, there will be a new episode. Watch this space. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Happy birthday, Kyle.